Peggy 12.
Street Fighter had some of the most iconic sound design of the time.
Anic, boom! Anic, boom! Iger, uppercut!
We still say them now in the office. You know, you can sit there and you get a yoga flame.
Yoga flame!
Actually, it spilled over to the school playground as well. I remember, those catchphrases being yelled at. It was that and wrestling catchphrases.
Iger!
It's almost like if someone else said, like Gar's catchphrase, for example,
Sonic Boom!
You couldn't say it because it belonged to them, which is nuts.
Mainly it was Ryu and Ken would have the most memorable phrases, so they would have Shoryuken and Hadouken.
No one really knew what they were or what they meant.
It's part of popular culture now that everyone kind of knows what a Hadouken is.
Hadouken!
I think at that point, people just, misheard.
I always thought it was like, how are you, Ken? But like said really quickly, how are you, Ken?
Shoryuken!
Right? It sounds like that.
I never understood the spinning kick thing. To this day, it's just like, that's all I get from it.
The fireball one's like, what are you on about?
But you just didn't know. It's the same thing when you listen to like song lyrics and just make it all up in your mind.
I would get that stuff wrong all the time, but I still shout it out.
I think I was that nerdy kid that would buy magazines and wanted to know that he said Tatsumaki Senpu Kyaku.
Street Fighter 2 might be one of the first things that inspired me to kind of study Japanese. I never really followed through with it enough, but I know Tatsumaki Senpu Kyaku, for example, is the hurricane kick. That's about as complicated as it gets, I think.
But yeah, everybody had a little name for that. I think a friend of mine thought it sounded like, don't touch those barukas.
Some of my fondest memories of Street Fighter 2 in general is all that kind of stuff.
Fight!
I first met the original Street Fighter in an arcade in Dublin, where I used to go and visit my dad every year. Went into this arcade, had the pressure-sensitive buttons, which was a complete revelation at the time. And it was also absolutely rock hard. I could never make my way past the first character, who was British, suitably enough.
I remember the first time I came across it. I was on holiday
USA!
in America with my mum and dad. 1992, I think.
I remember it was the day before a school trip, so I think it must have been like the end of term.
We were in, I think, a 7-Eleven. An American guy, it kind of looked like the picture you'd have in your head of like a gang member or something, came in and started remarking about my playstyle, which was entirely ineffective. And then he challenged me to a game. He beat me, but he was very gracious about it afterwards and seemed very excited to have played a British guy. That was the first time I played Street Fighter 2.
A friend of mine moved to Reading, so I used to go up to Reading to go and visit her, and we basically spent our entire time in this chip shop.
My friends had been talking about this new game being in the arcade and everyone kind of wanted to play it, and it was 10p ago, and I remember using dinner money to give it a try in the morning before school. And then it just became a ritual.
Everyone would just stand around this like one machine, all like egging each other on, annoying each other, playing the game like over and over. I'm kind of thinking about how much money in today's money we must have spent.
It took me, say, an hour to get to school, but I would purposefully leave 2 hours before so that I could visit various kind of shops along the way where they would have Street Fighter 2 cabinets. It would take me 2 hours to get to school with that, and I didn't have any lunch money by the time I arrived.
I didn't spend that much because I didn't have a lot of pocket money. I was so young. I was only like 6 or 7 at the time. But with Street Fighter 2, that completely changed because then I was basically sneaking off into town, into the arcades, into this very, very dodgy arcade in the back streets of Wolverhampton just to play Street Fighter 2.
So we didn't really have an arcade close to us. We did have a leisure centre that would alternate one arcade machine in the foyer. And for a while it was Street Fighter 2. So we may have put some money into that machine.
Going to different arcades in the morning and challenging different people. It was the same as the kind of thing that's going on in the game with Ryu being on this kind of journey, going to different countries, fighting different people, wanting to be the best. So your experience with the game felt like the character's journey in the game as well, to me.
Japan!
The first time I owned the game, that was when it came out for the SNES, Super Street Fighter 2.
Whatever year the bundle came out with the Street Fighter 2 and Super Nintendo, I remember I needed that for Christmas.
I was pretty much out of control with excitement for that.
I don't mean want, I mean at age when you're a child. You're like, if I don't get this for Christmas, I'm dead.
And they had it in the shop where I was working. I coveted it quite a lot. I also remember it costing £80.
It was quite difficult to convince a parent that was necessary.
Me and my brother knew that it was too expensive that we'd get that as an individual present, but we thought, if we team up and say, hey, you can get us a joint present, maybe it will happen. And it did.
You win.
My granddad's house, she lived in Norwich. We used to go there every year for Christmas, and we went there. And we knew already, because you see the box, there's only one rectangular box that big, you think what it's going to be, and we did.
We got a lot of hours out of it. Me and my mates gathered around the SNES.
I didn't have Street Fighter on a home console for a very, very long time, but I had a lot of friends who did. And again, it was that thing of, you go around to like a friend's house, and it became like a whole, gang of us together playing the whole day. And so I kind of really associated it with being like that kind of social side of gaming, which was really, really nice.
Finally getting it home and just having free reign and having your friends over, it just turned into like a reason to gather friends together.
I'd go around my mate Tom's house and we'd just spend hours with those 8 characters, getting to know them, wishing we could play as Bison and Bullrock. When that opportunity came, it was like nothing we'd ever known in gaming before, that you could be the bosses.
Me and my neighbour used to obsess over it into like 4 a.m, 5 a.m. sessions, so yeah, my thumbs were just bloody and raw by the end of it.
My first character was
Ryu or Ken.
As I'm sure many people did, Ryu or Ken.
Ryu and Ken.
It feels really boring doing that.
Ryu. I liked his stage, I liked his music, and I liked his white gi when I was a kid. That's all it took to warm to someone. And of course my brother would choose Ken, and that was it. It was Ryu and Ken for ages.
Shoryuken.
Ryu to start with, because it was all about perfecting the Dragon Punch.
I think most accomplished players would say, Dragon Punch is fine, but Dragon Punch is fiddly. Landing one of those in-game, particularly as a winner, that's a great feeling.
It was like, right, I've achieved everything I need to in life now.
So the character I would always play as was Blanca. Everyone else is just like really normal. So, why would I want to be an Orgo? Why can't I just be someone who can electrocute someone? And when I found that, I was like, oh my god, I can electrocute people, this is way better.
I do remember losing constantly to a Blanca player in the arcade that I visited, and I'd read that Zangief was a really good kind of counter pick to that. So I think I started with him, but he's a very difficult character to use when you're literally just beginning the game. So I lost miserably. And then I think I'd settled on Honda, who was pretty much the character I used throughout the whole of Street Fighter 2 and all of those iterations. He's a fantastic character. He's got lots of little tricks. People would just jump in all the time with flying kicks, and he had like an invincible headbutt. You could literally just sit there and let people just get wrecked.
When you played with mates, and they came around and they had picked another character and they were good at it, you saw a whole new side to the game, and you're like, oh man. There was always something else to try and learn should you want to go out of your way to do it, or you could just be like me and stick with Ryu, and sometimes be Ken, because he felt a bit different even though he's probably exactly the same.
I could dabble in a bit of Sagat, because it was similar to Ryu and Ken, but it kind of normally ended up coming back to Ken, because he had that... Ryu was kind of a bit stronger with the fireball, but Ken had the uppercut, and I wanted to land the uppercut. So even now, he's the character I'd default to, which is a bit dull, really. I'd rather say I'm a master of Dulcine. But who's a master of Dulcine?
I can kind of very clearly remember what I was doing in my life when different versions of Street Fighter came out, because that was who I was playing with in the arcade or where I was playing it.
The next version I got into was probably Street Fighter Alpha 2. I took my Saturn with me to university, and there was a guy who lived a couple of doors along in the dorms who was Malaysian. His name was Cheat Sun, we used to call him Chip, and he was crazy about these games. It was that and Marvel vs. Capcom, and he was, an ace. Like the button combos he could pull off, the sort of thing you watch on YouTube, and you just think, how's that possible? But he would do this, and he would batter me both of these games massively. But when it came to Alpha 2, we always used to finish with a Ken versus Ken, because we both liked Ken best. And for whatever reason, the fate of the gods or whatever, he never actually beat me at Ken versus Ken. And after it happened the first couple of times, and he'd get, just furious that he'd lost. So after the first couple of times, I maintained this winning streak. We'd get to the end and he'd be like, oh, Ken versus Ken. I'd be like, not today, not today. Oh! And then the next time, then every now and then I think, right, I'll try it today. And he never beat me. I'm right up to the end of university, still never got me the Ken versus Ken. That's probably like my proudest gaming achievement.
I am genuinely excited about Street Fighter 5 because, all thanks to Street Fighter 4.
I never got into Street Fighter 3 or the Alpha series. Got back into it again when 4 came out on the 360.
I think it did an amazing job of kind of trying to bring it back to that accessible level.
But at the same time, I think they did a good job of kind of weaving in some of the more popular intricacies of newer releases.
When Street Fighter 4 came out, I thought, right, this is it. I'm getting back into Street Fighter properly. To the point I went to friends that I knew who were genuine Street Fighter players and would play once a week, and they'd pick their characters and they knew the insides out. I said, teach me. Teach me your magic.
Making me sleepy.
I was at a big website at the time, and we were covering lots of other big games that were coming out at the time. I remember, like, we went to Sweden to go and see the makers of Battlefield, and we'd interview other developers about their game. And because Street Fighter was coming out, we'd talk to them about what Street Fighter meant to them, and they want to talk about Street Fighter way longer than they want to even talk about their own game.
Get out of my face!
And I remember how much fun I had with that game.
Finished practicing now?
And with the satisfaction I got from winning. So now that 5 is coming out, and it seems to be, you know, using what 4 did and just expanding on it, I can't wait.
I really enjoy it. It's kind of gone back to... It's similar to Street Fighter 2 in that it's like a very high damage game. So you can have combos that are only perhaps 5-6 hits, but the damage is massive. And the pace is a lot quicker. You don't have as many hard knockdowns where you get knocked down and you spend time on the floor. You can do the quick get up, so the pace feels so much quicker and rounds are over so much quicker, so it's a very tense game.
You know, when I first played it, I was a child. You know, I'm not even a formed man, and now here I am, well into my adult life, and I'm going to play it again. I think, you know, in terms of how I approach games and what games mean to me, it's always been there. It's the mainstay.
It's a game that's kind of travelled with me through my career and my life, all the way up now to Street Fighter 5. Every new Street Fighter announcement is always just an essential thing for me. It's something I still get that kind of giddy schoolboy excitement about.
And I don't think you can really find many gamers that you talk to that haven't had some experience with it or some joy in playing it.
And there's so few games that can boast that, but Street Fighter's definitely one of them.
It's still the daddy of fighting games, so utmost respect for it, yeah.
It's difficult to imagine, really, my life without it.